Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week International series, then you might know that for the last couple years we've done a recurring series called Dumbest Criminals. In these compilation videos, we take a look at some of the dumbest international criminals and crime stories that we've covered so far in a given year. While we're not quite halfway through the year just yet, since our video editor is on vacation this week, we decided now would be a perfect time to drop our second quarterly installment of the year. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so references to specific days of the week, as well as other small details, may no longer apply. Also, we're bringing this back by popular demand, so be sure to let us know in the comments section below if this is still something you enjoy. With that out of the way, let's get to the video. Authorities in the Japanese city of Saitama say that a would-be robber ended up empty-handed this week after he tried to rob a local convenience store, only to apparently be outwitted by the store's clerk. According to reports, the incident took place shortly before 1 a.m. on April 6th, when the unidentified suspect walked into a 7-Eleven in Saitama's Huancayo neighborhood. After approaching the counter, the man brandished a hammer threateningly at the business's 56-year-old clerk. While the situation was shaping up to be a fairly ordinary, though likely nonetheless terrifying robbery, bizarrely, that's when things took a turn. After demanding money from the register, the suspect paused for a second and then asked, "You've got money, right?" Without missing a beat, the employee responded, "We don't." Of course, this was a total lie, and all the suspect would have conceivably had to do was demand that the clerk open the register to confirm. I mean, it's a convenience store. Obviously, the employee needed to at least have change handy to give to customers. Unbelievably, though, the bluff worked, and the man simply gave up and walked off. I mean, I've heard of the pen being mightier than the sword, but 2 words beating a hammer? That's a new one. Anyway, at the time of this recording, it appears that police are still looking for the bumbling robber. If this incident was any indication of his criminal prowess, though, it likely won't be long before he's caught. Authorities in South Australia say that an alleged drunk driver is facing charges this week after he was apparently caught asleep at the wheel near the drive-thru of a fast food restaurant. The incident began at around 5:30 a.m. on April 20th, when the suspect, an unidentified 35-year-old man, was driving while intoxicated in the Adelaide suburb of Bolivar. Evidently in need of an early morning snack, the man decided to stop at a McDonald's location off of Port Wakefield Road, where he quickly caught the attention of staff. According to reports, it wasn't hard for them to tell that he was drunk. For starters, he reportedly got into the parking lot by driving his Holden utility vehicle straight off the road and over a patch of grass before crashing through a barbed wire fence. He continued on until he got to the drive-thru, where witnesses allege he fell asleep at the wheel. That's when employees called police. By the time officers arrived, the man had reportedly woken up and was spotted driving again from the McDonald's into the adjacent parking lot of a gas station. It was here that police caught up with him, with some reports suggesting that he may have fallen asleep for a second time. The 35-year-old was subjected to a blood alcohol test, which apparently returned a result of .230, nearly 5 times the legal limit. His license was immediately suspended for 12 months, and his vehicle was impounded at the scene. Reports state that the man has also been charged with drunk driving and driving without due care. Authorities in the Thai province of Kalasin say that a 25-year-old would-be robber was embarrassingly thwarted this week after he walked into a bank and threatened staff with an obviously fake gun, only for a security guard to immediately call his bluff. According to reports, the incident took place on the afternoon of April 17th at a Big C department store in Huancayo district. At around 4:30 p.m., the suspect, later identified as 25-year-old Yotin Kotwang, went into a branch of the Kalasin Bank located within the store. Once inside, he demanded money from staff and one of the bank's customers, pulling out and waving around what he obviously wanted them to believe was a handgun. The thing was, though, the so-called handgun was actually a fake, and apparently not a very convincing one at that. Enough so that instead of entertaining Yotin's demands, the store's 55-year-old security guard immediately tackled him to the ground instead. The 25-year-old was arrested at the scene. During questioning, Yotin reportedly confessed everything to police, saying that he had tried to rob the bank because he had stolen 300,000 baht, or about $8,800 US, from his gas station job and gambled it all away. He claimed that all he was trying to do was replace the money. Of course, during the actual robbery, he demanded 1 million baht, so if you ask us, it seems like he was trying to do a little more than that. Anyway, Yotin also told police that he had purchased the fake gun used in the crime online. He'd only paid 99 baht for it, the equivalent of about $3, which likely explains why it didn't fool anyone. The 25-year-old is now facing multiple charges, including attempted robbery, threatening others, and illegal confinement. Authorities in Peru say that they are searching for a trio of bumbling thieves this week after they robbed a high-end shoe store, though only managed to make off with half of what they intended to steal. According to reports, the incident took place in the early morning hours of April 30th in the city of Huancayo. The suspects arrived at the store at around 2:30 a.m., and almost immediately, things didn't go as planned. First, the thieves couldn't get through the locks on the front door, so they were forced to leave and come back. A second attempt with new tools also failed. It was only after an hour of trial and error that the suspects were eventually successful. After finally making their way into the store, the thieves helped themselves to as much of the business's merchandise as they could fit into their vehicles. In all, police estimate that they took 220 shoes before fleeing the scene. The crime was discovered the next day by the 37-year-old owner, who arrived at her business to find that the place had been ransacked. Sadly, the equivalent of about $14,500 worth of products were missing. There was a notable catch, though. Now, you may have noticed that before, when we mentioned that 222 shoes were missing, we did not say 222 pairs of shoes. This was intentional. You see, the criminals had only managed to get away with 220 individual shoes, all of which were for right feet. It turned out that as a security measure, the business owner had separated the pairs of shoes and stored their corresponding left feet separately. So yeah, the suspects may have gotten away with the loot, but it sounds like they're going to have a hell of a time selling it off. At the time of this recording, police are still searching for the thieves. They hope that since the stolen merchandise will be hard to get rid of, that when they find those responsible, they will be able to recover most of it. Customs authorities in the Indian city of Chennai say that life somewhat imitated art this week after a Malaysian woman was caught and arrested after literally smuggling a bag full of snakes onto a plane. Now, I know what you're thinking, but no, this week's situation did not go down like the 2006 movie Snakes on a Plane. That's probably for the best though, because if I recall correctly, a lot of people died in that movie. Also, if the worst had happened, I doubt Kenan Thompson would have been available to land this particular plane. Anyway, according to reports, this week's incident took place on April 28th and wasn't discovered until after the unidentified suspect got off her flight from Kuala Lumpur to Chennai. Officials were doing their usual screening of luggage when they realized that the woman had 22 snakes and a chameleon inside her bag. Even though the critters remained safely inside the plastic containers the woman had sealed them in, customs officers were quick to point out that this was still 23 more reptiles than anyone should ever have in their bag at the airport, and she was promptly arrested. I guess it goes to show that you don't need to be Samuel L. Jackson to be tired of people bringing motherfucking snakes onto motherfucking planes. Authorities on the Indonesian island of Java say that a 25-year-old man is facing murder charges this week after he allegedly killed his wife in a fit of rage and then tried to cover up the crime to make it look like she had choked on food. According to reports, the incident took place on May 5th when the suspect, identified only by the initials RD, got into a heated argument with his wife, 27-year-old NAS, in the bedroom of their home. It's unclear what exactly the fight was about, but police allege the situation escalated to violence when NAS told RD that she planned to leave him and take their young child with her. That's when RD reportedly grabbed his wife by the neck, strangling her until she passed out, at which point he covered her face with a pillow until she was dead. After the murder, RD apparently realized that he would have to explain the situation, so he set to work covering up the crime. He went out and did some grocery shopping, then returned and stuffed some of the food into his dead wife's mouth, making sure to mess up their bed sheets so it looked like NAS had been struggling and gasping for air. He then pretended to stumble across the scene, telling family members, neighbors, and police that his wife had choked on a meatball. Unfortunately for RD, investigators uncovered what had really happened when an autopsy was conducted and bruises from the strangulation were found on NAS's neck. The 25-year-old was arrested and apparently later confessed during questioning. He has now been charged with murder and, if convicted, is reportedly looking at a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week International series, then you might remember a pretty strange case out of England that we covered all the way back in September of 2021. The story was about a man in a leather gimp mask who was jumping out of the woods in front of drivers on the A34 motorway in the town of Highclere and exposing himself to oncoming traffic. If you'll recall, at the time of that report, we also mentioned a similar situation that was happening in the county of Somerset, where residents had been repeatedly terrorized by another unknown man, albeit one in a full-body gimp outfit instead. Well, after nearly 2 years, it seems that the Somerset gimp has finally been identified. According to reports, the latex-clad exhibitionist was arrested after a bizarre incident on May 9th, when he terrified a woman in her 30s who was driving in the town of Bleeden. It was around 11:15 p.m. and the woman was headed home when she saw something ahead that she initially thought was a badger. However, as she drew closer, to her horror, she realized that it was an adult man in a black full-body gimp suit who was crawling and writhing all over the road. The woman immediately called police, who arrived at the scene minutes later and placed the man under arrest. Because of this, the notorious Somerset gimp has now been identified as a 31-year-old local man named Joshua Hunt. It appears that since the time of our last report, Joshua has been busy. In addition to this week's incident, he was charged in connection with at least 2 others dating back as far as October of last year. At the time of this recording, Joshua remains in police custody. He has been charged with 2 counts of affray, 1 count of possession of a bladed article, and 1 count of committing an act of outraging public decency. Unfortunately, it appears that the identity of the Highclere Forest gimp is still unknown. Authorities in the English county of Cambridgeshire say that a bumbling criminal has been sentenced to prison time this week after he left a vital piece of evidence behind at the scene of a robbery. The incident took place back on March 3rd when 38-year-old Patrick Muddyman walked into a co-op shop in the village of Brampton. After threatening staff and customers there, the 38-year-old demanded that employees hand over cash. According to reports, Muddyman was given some money in denominations of 5 and 10 pound notes, but reportedly became enraged when he was told by staff that they didn't have access to any larger bills. After demanding a pack of cigarettes as well, he ran off with just 120 pounds, or about $150 US, despite the attempts of two brave customers who tried to intervene and hold Moneyman until police could arrive. Fortunately, it turned out that it wasn't all that hard to identify the 38-year-old. In addition to the entire incident being captured on the store's surveillance cameras, Moneyman accidentally forgot his wallet at the crime scene. Inside was a provisional driver's license, which police used to identify him and track him down. According to reports, at the time of his arrest, Moneyman already had a lengthy criminal record. Sources state that he has 24 previous convictions for 36 offenses, including theft, violence, and of course, other robberies. This week, Moneyman was sentenced to 6 years in prison over the March robbery. He will reportedly face another 3 years of probation once he is released. Authorities in the Indonesian province of East Java say that a 56-year-old woman is facing potential charges this week in connection with an ongoing housing dispute in which she is accused of terrorizing her neighbors in truly gross fashion. According to the victim, identified only by the name Wiwik, it all started in 2017 when she and her family moved into their house in the city of Sidoarjo. Apparently, the family didn't exactly get a warm welcome. Almost immediately, they began to have problems with one of their new neighbors, a 56-year-old woman identified only by the name Mazria. Wiwik says that almost immediately after moving in, Mazria began vandalizing and doing disgusting things to their property. She would dump garbage there, throw dirty water, and grossest of all, pour buckets of urine on their house. While Wiwik was originally quick to complain to local authorities, and Mazria reportedly agreed to stop during a mediation arranged by village officials, apparently she never did. Wiwik says that this has now been going on for 6 years, and she says that Mazria is still dumping urine on her house almost every day. However, it was only recently that she allegedly had a video camera installed and managed to catch her neighbor in the act. According to reports, Mazria was brought in for questioning by police, where she allegedly explained the incredibly petty reason behind her disgusting behavior. Apparently, Wiwik's house formerly belonged to one of her siblings, and she was hoping that by making the place undesirable, she would be able to get Wiwik and her family to move so that she could buy it back at a cheap price. At the time of this recording, the case is still under investigation. Police say that the 56-year-old may soon face criminal charges. Authorities in the Taiwanese port city of Kaohsiung say that a foolish 47-year-old man did himself no favors this week after he was given a fine for drinking and driving, only to escalate things to criminal charges when he allegedly got behind the wheel again less than 24 hours later. According to reports, it all started on the morning of May 17th when the suspect, identified by the name Xiao, was pulled over by police while driving his scooter. A subsequent test revealed that he had a blood alcohol content of approximately 0.04%. This was technically over the country's legal limit of 0.03%, but still less than 0.05, the point at which it's considered a criminal offense. As a result, Xiao was later released after being issued a fine. Despite the close call, Xiao was apparently upset about the situation and continued drinking. After hammering back several more beers, the 47-year-old still couldn't get the fine off of his mind. However, at some point, he realized he couldn't seem to remember how much the officer had told him he was going to have to pay. He decided to solve his problem by hopping back on his scooter and driving down to the police station to find out. According to reports, it didn't take long for police to arrest Xiao for a second time. As he arrived at the station, several officers watched in disbelief as he drove on the wrong side of the road and the sidewalk before pulling right up to the front door. He also reeked of alcohol. When Xiao's blood alcohol content was tested this time, it came back as 0.13%, putting him solidly in the criminal range for drunk driving. He was promptly taken into custody and slapped with a series of charges, including drunk driving and endangering the public. Authorities in Japan's Hyogo Prefecture say that they recently arrested a 22-year-old man in connection with a bizarre case after he allegedly sent more than a dozen threatening communications to his former driving school, along with hundreds of origami cranes. According to reports, between October 27th of last year and April 9th of this year, the driving school in question in Kobe City received no less than 15 threatening letters from the suspect, as well as 1,500 origami cranes. The letters were apparently addressed to a 39-year-old employee of the company and had messages on them such as, "Die," and "Quit your job now." It appears that the cranes were just paper cranes, though many sources were quick to point out the irony, considering that they are most commonly recognized as a symbol of peace. In any case, the 22-year-old suspect was reportedly tracked down thanks to surveillance camera footage, after which police discovered he was a former student of the driving school. He had apparently failed to get his truck driver's license last year and blamed the school for their, quote, "poor teaching style." Following the suspect's arrest on May 11th, police asked him what the deal was with the origami cranes. He reportedly replied that folding them helped to calm him down. It's unclear if he is yet facing formal charges. After news of the story broke, internet users in Japan had mixed reactions to the story. Some commented that the suspect's origami actually looked pretty good, while others wondered if all that time spent folding might have been put to better use if the man had simply practiced his driving. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.